Hi everyone, it's Katrina. From people trying to take the best selfie to accidents waiting to happen, here are 11 zoo animal attacks. Number 11. Rhino Attacks Zookeeper. In early 2018, a senior zookeeper was suddenly attacked by a 4.4-ton rhinoceros at the Mogo Zoo along the southern coast of New South Wales, Australia. The 47-year-old woman was feeding the animal when Kay, a southern white rhino, suddenly impaled her arm with his horn. She was airlifted to Canberra Hospital, where she received treatment for a puncture wound and a suspected broken arm. The privately owned zoo referred to the otherwise routine encounter as a freak accident, reassuring the curious public that the zookeeper's injuries were minimal and that her recovery was going very well. Kay, the rhino, was also reportedly doing well after what zoo owner Sally Patey called a minor incident. But just to be safe, Mogo Zoo said they would revise their safety protocols. Probably a good idea. The incident came 5 years after a rhino bit a zookeeper at Taronga Western Plains Zoo in Dubbo, Australia, nearly severing the 34-year-old's thumb. She too was feeding the animal when the attack occurred. It seems like rhinos get cranky when they're fed. Maybe they should be fed from a distance, and make sure to give them their space. Number 10. Tiger Mauls Woman. A terrifying tiger attack at Beijing Badaling Wildlife World left one woman dead and another severely injured in mid-2016. Disturbing footage of the incident shows a woman exiting a car, only to be attacked and dragged away almost immediately by a tiger. Moments later, another woman got out of the same car, presumably to help her friend, and a different tiger fatally mauled her. Park rangers appear to arrive on scene within seconds, according to the footage, but their attempts to save the mortally wounded woman were in vain. The survivor received medical treatment, but the Yangqing district government did not disclose any other details, including the extent of her injuries. An argument between the two women reportedly caused one of them to exit the vehicle, while a third male occupant remained in the car unharmed. Visitors are permitted to drive around the wildlife park, but are warned to avoid leaving their vehicles in areas where animals roam freely for their safety and yours. The argument must have gotten out of control, and it is believed the cats picked up on the anxiety, causing them to attack. Try to avoid having a huge fight around wild animals. Number 9. Brown Bear Attack. Vera Blisk, an experienced zookeeper and animal activist, was showing a new staff member how to tend to a bear cage at the Ussurisk Municipal Zoo when a 20-year-old female Himalayan bear named Manyunya swiped its claws at her in September 2019. She kneeled down to show how to feed a bear, then quickly stood up and felt dizzy, a colleague and witness to the tragic event said. To gain balance, Vera leaned towards a cage for a split second. This was enough for a bear to pull its paw through the cage's bars and to strike. Doctors were unable to save the woman's lower leg, but the victim was anything but bitter. Moments after waking up from her amputation, Vera called for the bear not to be punished or euthanized. The woman had a history of acknowledging the inherent dangers that come along with interacting with wild bears, saying at one point, "Even by just kissing the bear, now I might lose my head within a split second." To work with a bear, you must have a special feeling, she said. We say it's a feeling sent by God. You must feel a bear. Number 8. Elephant versus Instructor. Lucy Mello, a zookeeper at the Taronga Zoo in Sydney, Australia, sustained severe injuries in October 2012 when a 2-year-old Asian elephant calf named Pathy Harn pinned her against a post while she taught the creatures how to wash themselves. About a month later, the then 40-year-old woman wrote a blog revealing details of the attack, explaining that she knew just seconds beforehand that the young pachyderm was considering challenging her. Just 2 days before the unfortunate incident occurred, Pathy Harn had tried blocking a grown female 3 times his size from leaving the pool area of the exhibit, according to the Manly Daily, boosting the elephant's confidence in a less than desired way. He was just enjoying it as usual, Mello said in her description of the attack. As the session was coming to an end, I asked for one simple final behavior. He offered me a slightly different behavior than the one I had asked. I asked him again for the correct version. When he did not respond, I sensed a behavioral change in him and realized that he was thinking of challenging me. As Mello cautiously made her way toward the stall's exit, Pathy Harn raised his trunk and slammed her body against a metal post. His trunk on my chest took my breath away, which made it impossible for me to talk and tell him to stop, the zookeeper recalled. Mello's coworkers came to her aid, and once the short ordeal was over, Pathy Harn acted like it had never happened. He was moved to a more controlled training environment while Milo was treated for her injuries, including cracked ribs. Despite the traumatizing experience, she reported feeling eager to return to work. Number 7. Jaguar Selfie Attack. A woman who climbed into a jaguar exhibit at the Wildlife World Zoo near Phoenix, Arizona in early 2019 learned the hard way that safety is more important than selfies. A female jaguar attacked the woman who had entered the enclosure to take photos of herself with the big cats. Cries for help led fellow zoogoers to the scene, where the woman was pinned up against the animal's cage with its claws sunken into her arm. An onlooker attempted to distract the jaguar by jamming a water bottle through a hole in the cage. The cat released her claw from the woman's arm, but kept a firm hold on her sweatshirt, at which point bystanders grabbed the woman and pulled her out of the cage, AZ Central reported. While her injuries were non-life-threatening, the bite victim's arm was reportedly in bad shape. Meanwhile, an investigation showed that the Wildlife World Zoo was in compliance with safety rules and regulations as of 2018. Zoo staff decided not to euthanize the big cat, asserting that the jaguar was not doing anything wrong by acting instinctively when someone crossed into her territory. Was the jaguar selfie worth it? I don't think so. Number 6. Binky the polar bear. This incident serves as a somewhat surprising reminder that selfie culture dates back far earlier than we tend to realize. In 1994, an Australian woman named Catherine Warburton hopped over 2 safety barricades around a polar bear exhibit at the Alaska Zoo in Anchorage, hoping to get a close-up with a bear named Binky. The then 29-year-old received an unpleasant surprise when Binky leaned forward and grasped onto her, latching his jaws onto her thighs and prompting bystanders to hit the polar bear with a stick in an attempt to get him to release Warburton. Thankfully, the woman broke free and received necessary medical treatment. For Warburton, the consequences of imposing on a wild animal's territory included a broken leg and bite wounds, as well as surgery. Naturally, people were conflicted about whether to blame the woman for what happened to her, with many, including zoo director Samuel Sewell, believing the woman was responsible for her injuries. She did it to herself, and it wasn't the zoo's fault. To Warburton's credit, she admitted from the hospital that getting too close to Binky was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Footage of the disturbing encounter was released to the public in 2015, sparking a renewed interest in the seemingly long-forgotten case. Number 5. Gugu the Panda. By now, you would think that most people know better than to get too close to a wild animal, including those held captive at zoos. But it seems as if this lesson will never be learned, as evidenced by a 2009 incident at the Beijing Zoo, where a 240-pound giant panda named Gugu attacked a visitor who had climbed over a 5-foot barrier surrounding the exhibit to retrieve his child's toy. Giant pandas are adorable, but they are still wild. This wasn't the first time Gugu attacked a zoo visitor. Just 2 years earlier, he became aggressive with another zoo visitor who was drunk and climbed in with the panda, trying to give it a big hug. In another incident, Gugu also latched on a teenager's legs who entered his exhibit. Why does everyone keep trying to hang out with this panda? Encounters like these remind us of the importance of respecting an animal's space and understanding that however cute and cuddly they may appear, we as humans are not meant to go near them. The father who was attacked while trying to get his child's toy from Gugu's exhibit sustained damage to major ligaments as zookeepers struggled to pry Gugu's mouth open and free the man's leg. He required major surgery to repair the damage. The lesson to be learned here? Zoo enclosures are intended to keep us out as much as they're meant to keep animals in. Replacing an item you dropped into an exhibit, including a child's toy, is a much smaller price to pay than having your body torn to shreds. Number 4. Harry the Hippo. A British man named Richard McCormick eagerly began his job as a zookeeper at the Whitley Zoo in Coventry, England in 1966. Within a short time, he was looking after large animals including elephants, bears, and a hippo named Harry. While entering Harry's cage to clean it one day, a safety barrier malfunctioned, causing a heavy door to hit the hippo's rear end. As I'm sure you can imagine, the 3.3-ton creature was not happy and wasted no time attacking McCormick. He grabbed my head between his jaws and dragged me off into his pool, McCormick recalled in a BBC interview. I felt my ribs crack. I was scared to death. I thought I was going to die. Weeks earlier, Harry had a tusk removed due to a toothache. The absence of this tusk ultimately proved life-saving for McCormick, who would have most likely been impaled. A fellow employee overheard McCormick's screams and rushed to the scene where he hit Harry with a metal bar, prompting the hippo to drop his victim out of his mouth. McCormick was rushed to the hospital with a punctured liver, broken ribs, and a broken collarbone. All things considered, it could have turned out much worse. The man has no hard feelings against Harry for what happened, despite his body bearing teeth marks from the attack over 50 years later. Number 3. Siberian Tiger vs. Zookeeper. In early June of this year, a Siberian tiger fatally attacked a zookeeper at the Zurich Zoo in Switzerland. Zoo visitors alerted staff to the encounter, and zookeepers rushed into the enclosure in an attempt to spare their coworker from death. They successfully lured the tiger named Irina away from the scene, but by then the damage had been done. The 55-year-old woman Irina had attacked was gone. The zoo opened an investigation to find out why the zookeeper was inside the enclosure. Meanwhile, Irina was relocated to another cage, and the zoo announced that she would endure no punishments for what occurred. The tiger is a wild animal, zoo officials asserted in a statement following the attack. A person in their facility is an intruder into their territory. In her reaction, she only followed her natural instincts. This shocking incident serves as a sobering reminder that no matter how well trained you are, sometimes a wild captive animal will act according to instinct rather than what it was taught. Number 2. Bear vs. woman in glass box. While this wasn't exactly at a zoo, as far as I could tell, it seems like a terrifying experience. A woman was sitting in a glass box hanging out observing a bear, all in the name of entertainment. Supposedly, this was for a Japanese game show. She was ready to record the experience to see what would happen, and the bear was not happy. Grizzly bears are extremely strong and powerful predators, weighing between 700 and 1,700 pounds. It turned on the woman, tossing the glass box around, most likely trying to get what was inside. Needless to say, the woman was terrified, and as many videos will show you, she was screaming as the bear literally flipped the case over. In this case, the attack was real, but the setup was intentional. It is some sort of game or challenge from a news show that was leaked, apparently called Predator Shield. Have any of you heard about this? Or do you know more about what happened? Let me know in the comments below. All I know is bears are super dangerous, and nobody asked me, but I think this challenge is an accident waiting to happen. It can be really bad for both the bear and the person inside the box. Number 1. Harambe. One of the most controversial and well-known incidents of a zoo animal attacking began with a 4-year-old boy falling into a gorilla exhibit at the Cincinnati Zoo on May 28, 2016. A 17-year-old, 450-pound silverback gorilla named Harambe approached the unfortunate child and began dragging him around like a rag doll, prompting efforts to save the little boy. Harambe's intentions were unclear, as he alternated between simply standing over the child in a seemingly protective stance and roughly pulling the kid from place to place throughout the enclosure. After a 10-minute-long standoff between Harambe and zoo staff, the zookeepers felt they had no choice but to euthanize the gorilla to preserve the child's safety. The Cincinnati Zoo said it was a difficult decision to end Harambe's life, but outraged activists weren't buying their claims that the measure was necessary. Some social media users went as far as calling for criminal charges against the child's apparently distracted mother for not watching her son closely enough to prevent him from falling into the exhibit. But the authorities chose not to arrest the boy's mom, as they felt she was not being negligent enough to constitute a crime. This came as good news for supporters of the mother, who understood how quickly things can go wrong in just seconds while watching multiple children, which is what she was doing when her son tumbled into Harambe's enclosure. While the zoo was quick to defend the exhibit as being safe and up to standard, they also implemented beams and rope netting to the barrier and increased its height to prevent any more needless tragedies in the future. Zoo authorities say the same decision would be made today, since a tranquilizer may have taken too long to take effect. The family of the toddler said to donate to the zoo in honor of Harambe, and that they are very sorry for the terrible incident. Thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!